The Kingdom Hearts series has seen many games over the years, with multiple playable characters such as in titles like Chain of Memories, Birth by Sleep, and Dream Drop Distance. This has been done to offer greater lore detail, insight on important events, character development, gameplay variation, and another perspective in the storyline. In doing so, we've been introduced to a wide range of different protagonists over the course of 16 years that we've all grown to deeply love. But what role will it play in Kingdom Hearts 3? Who will we get to play as other than Sora? And how exactly are the writers and developers going to approach this? Hello and welcome to a new video. I'm Vanguard and today, we'll be talking about playable characters in Kingdom Hearts 3. But without further ado, let's get right into it. There have been multiple instances where director Tetsuya Nomura has confirmed this to be a feature in the upcoming game. In D23 of July 2017 last year, IGN interviewed Tetsuya Nomura, and here was what he had to say. So it would be tough to introduce many multiple characters, but there is an intention of adding playable characters aside from Sora. Unfortunately, we're not able to disclose who it is yet, but there will be another playable character. More recently, after E3 of 2018 this year, he was asked by Game Informer about the second playable character. He replied with, "There will be some times in the game where you're able to control characters other than Sora, but I just won't say which character at this moment." What we can take away from this is the fact that there will be a few occasions where you can play as two or more characters other than Sora, since the translation, if correct, reads as plural in the latter statement. However, the interviews are inconsistent, as in IGN's article it reads as singular, but I think trusting the newer interview might be a safer option, simply because it's more recent and occurs a year later in the development, though this is something to keep in mind. We also know from the setup of the story and trailers that Kingdom Hearts 3 will focus on Sora, who begins by retrieving or gaining a new power to replace what he lost in Dream Drop Distance, and afterwards reviving Roxas. Riku, who is accompanied by Mickey, travels into the realm of darkness to try rescue Aqua. It's unknown whether or not they will succeed, and Kairi, who is training with Lee to become a Keyblade Master. Along the way we'll come across Organization 13 members, and then in the final showdown we have the Keyblade War against Xehanort. So where does this leave us? I would like to first talk about the incorporation of the playable character system in the game. I think of course, Sora will have the utmost attention and focus in the narrative, which I feel has been established strongly. Chain of Memories was the first to utilize such concept, where you play as Sora for the vast majority and Riku becomes playable later after completing the main story. While I think it would be a great addition to have this style in Kingdom Hearts 3, I don't think this will necessarily be the case. I feel after Xehanort is taken down in the grand finale, there isn't much more to explore in the rest of the Xehanort saga. However, they could decide to hint towards the future games by having you play as someone important in the future or something, kind of like how Kingdom Hearts 2 began with Roxas, where it hints plot details for the future, except in its ending. I do think this is unlikely, because the secret movie and boss in my opinion does this job totally fine. Kingdom Hearts 2 features a Roxas tutorial setting, like I touched on. But another more likely option than I suggested is how KH3 opens up with a conversation between Xehanort and Ericus. It would be a very unique way to start things off as either of the two, to gain insight on Xehanort's mysterious history and the generation he grew up with, which I feel certainly needs expanding. Another way is like the final boss with Xemnas, where you briefly play as Riku. I think this is also a great and clever idea, since the element of surprise was awesome, and won't require too many resources to create, mainly because his options were limited to suit the short amount of time you got to play him. I would love to see this in the final Keyblade War during a major boss battle and possibly with multiple people. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep has you play as Aqua, Terra and Ventus. To experience the game in its entirety, you had to play the game 3 times as the 3 different characters. While I did enjoy this at the time, I really wouldn't want this to be in Kingdom Hearts 3. It felt a little repetitive at times, as you do already know the major events of the game after one playthrough. It's just unclear enough for how some of the events came to be. I wouldn't be a fan of replaying this game multiple times to get a more fulfilling story, but this time it would work far better, simply because characters like Riku, Kairi and Sora won't always be visiting the exact same worlds, and will have very different objectives. Dream Drop Distance forces you to play as Sora and Riku. This method might be the most likely, as it fits with what Nomura said in the Game Informer interview, where there will be a few times where you can play as the other characters, but the incorporation of this concept would be different, as we won't have the drop meter. It will be far more natural in the story, and less disruptive and annoying. After Sora finishes the Toy Story world for example, we could cut to Kairi's training in combat. Additionally, the playtime I don't think would be divided evenly among all the characters, as Sora is the focus. Now for the meat of the speculation. I'll be going through every possible playable characters I think will be in the game. Starting with Riku, I think this is a fairly safe option to bet on as either the developer or fan. He is one of the most important characters in the story. he's been playable many times, and his objective in this game will require him to be in different areas when compared to Sora. The best way to go about this, I think, would be to cut to Riku in a slower part of Sora's story, like when transitioning to another world to spice things up and not interrupt the flow. His movesets are unique, and depending on when the game chooses to grant access to him, he may have acquired the new powers from his Braveheart Keyblade. What better way to show off his newfound power than to actually play as him? And I have a gut feeling this could potentially be his last game, only because his character development seems to have reached its peak. They could in the future just introduce a new internal conflict that his character will have to deal with, but we've seen no hints of that so far. Regardless of the path they take, there are 4 times I can think of where we could play as Riku. Traveling to the Realm of Darkness, saving Aqua, interacting with Replica Riku, and possibly Terra at some point. Kairi, another very important character, a Princess of Heart, and a potential Guardian of Light, training with Lee under Merlin. She's been set up since the ending of Dream Drop Distance to have great relevance in KH3. It would be awesome to finally put the well-deserved spotlight on her for once, and we can see significant character development alongside with Lee in the process. Speaking of Lee, we need to know his history with Isa or Sayax, and we could understand it through conversations with Kairi. I think it's safe to say the two are confirmed to face off. Kairi could also visit Radiant Garden at some point, because she has lost memories of her hometown. I'd love to finally figure out once and for all how exactly she ended up on Destiny Island. And since Aqua is seemingly a Seeker of Darkness now, we can have her save Aqua in some way, as Kairi is indirectly her successor. So the game could cut to Kairi's story a total of 3 times for her training, visiting her hometown, and saving Aqua. Playing as either young Ericus or Xehanort would throw a compelling twist in the flow of the story. How they could easily include this in the game, like I mentioned before, is in the opening introduction. There was a Dengeki interview last year in 2017, where Nomura did say the conversation between the two will be the opening of the game. The main argument to this I can think of is the fact that Twilight Town is meant to serve as the tutorial stage, but then the two could be doing some sort of mission in this town together. Another way they can do this is later in the game, at some stage I assume Sora will learn about Xehanort's past and his motive somehow. Flashing back to play as Xehanort himself at one point in the game in order to understand his character and drive instead of just a cutscene and dialogue would truly be a memorable way to approach the scenario. The amount of interesting lore and exploration of the world back then would be so interesting. There's so much potential in this concept. It just seems that Ericus and Xehanort's history will be a strong focus at least for one point in the game. Depending on the direction of the story, they could reasonably fit and integrate everyone I mentioned as playable characters. It would be a lot for Square Enix to work on the other hand, and the game might have a problem with focus if they went this route. I'd like to list a few others that could be playable, but I think are far more unlikely. Though knowing Nomura's unpredictable nature, he might choose to surprise us. Roxas would be a nice throwback. However, he's a complete mystery as of right now, and I can't think of any evidence other than he's a probable Guardian of Light and a popular character. The game might spend a larger portion of time to revive him instead. Lee is also a very popular character and a likely Guardian of Light, though I do believe Kairi should be playable instead, because of her greater importance in the story as a Princess of Heart, and the need of her character development. Ventus, who is also another conundrum, as he has a strange history in Union Key that really needs explaining. But I wouldn't really say he needs to be playable, since the explanation can be in cutscenes, and we have no idea if he will be a Guardian of Light, because Aqua may be a Seeker of Darkness. Along with Ventus, we have Malusha or Laurium. His history is also unknown in Union Key, but I think it would be amazing to play him, since he is one of my favourites, offering a truly unique perspective as he belongs to the organisation. However, the chances of this are next to zero, and the purpose would be simply to explain Ven and his past, which can be simply done through dialogue and flashbacks. Incorporating at least both playable characters Riku and Kairi with Sora covers the vast majority of the story elements in a natural way, in which writers have set up in the previous installments of the series. I feel that this would be a satisfying way to end the Darkseeker saga and minimize major important events happening off screen, because there will be many things to cover, and too many cutscenes might break the overall experience. So having the original trio playable would personally be ideal, or they could focus more on Xehanort and Ericus' history, which would be special and memorable to play through. Best case scenario in terms of the story is if they could do both, but the lack of distinction between each character in gameplay might be an issue, as this was the complaint in Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance. But just knowing what I've seen in the combat so far with Sora, I have faith in the developers, but I hope the focus will mainly be on Sora in playtime. Maybe 70% Sora, 15% Kairi and 15% Riku, something like that. Another idea I thought of is temporarily playing as literally all of the Guardians of Light in the final war. They could have the players fight as each of the Guardians of Light against separate members of the organization, which would be incredible. It's a little bit of a crazy idea, and the budget for the finale would be through the roof. But when looking at how much Tetsuya Nomura has hyped up the final battle in the past, saying he's always wanted to do this, and this is his proudest work, this could very well be the case. You never know with the man. But that about wraps up this video. If you enjoyed, please have a like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.